Our guest today has a simple 6-word goal for what the world needs. More people, more active, more often. Improving the health of a nation is no mean feat, but having been in the industry for over a decade with 4,000 members alongside this inspiring organisation, promoting an active lifestyle has never been more important. It's also a message that's never been better served than today. So please join me in welcoming Steve Ward, CEO of UK Active, to the Escape Your Limits podcast, tackling real issues that will save a population's future. Welcome.
Hey man, how are you?
I'm good. And I feel very guilty after looking at the poster behind you, which says inactivity is more dangerous.
We're sat.
We're sat, yeah. And I also walked up, I didn't walk up the stairs, I used the lift.
It's all coming out already, isn't it? This is like confession time. I thought we were here for a chat on the industry. What's going on?
But my excuse is it's 35 degrees out there, and I thought, well, I need, and it's being filmed.
Yeah,
so am I forgiven?
We want to look our freshest, so it's understandable. No worries.
Yeah. So I'm forgiven. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about Steve Ward.
Steve Ward. I've got the privilege every day of serving this incredible industry that I know you've helped build over these last 25 years. It's a great pleasure to be the CEO here at UK Active. It's an organisation which took me in as a pup. I started here as an intern. It helped to develop me and let me loose and follow my passions. And I'm here, nearly 14 years later now, running the show and incredibly stimulated by the opportunities that our great industry has in front of it.
Right. Was this always something that you imagined yourself doing when you went to university?
Was it always something I imagined? Some sort of cunning plan. Well, do you know what it is? I grew up and, you probably hear this story many times over. Up until about the age of 15, I thought I'd be a professional footballer, then realised too short and not particularly talented, so that comes crashing down. But I ended up at uni doing sort of like a international policy strategy degree, and felt I might end up in the foreign service, sort of diplomatic service or something like that. And then I realised I didn't speak Chinese or Mandarin, so I'm an optimist, right? And then you feel reality hits. But I've got a huge passion for sport. Always had that. Developed a real passion for policy and communications, and it just so happened to be that I found a place where those two things came together, and I've sort of got the bug and never been able to leave it. So maybe not intended, but it's certainly been a very welcoming home.
Right. And we talked about interviews off camera. So when you came for your interview, did you sit in front of Dave Stork and say, one day I'm going to be in your chair? Was that how it happened?
No, I mean, weirdly, I was here a little bit before Dave. So it was Andre Dean who gave me my first break in her time as CEO here, and I came in as an intern, the second employee in the public affairs and policy team to do that, and I can remember those first 6 months, first job in an office, being almost sort of terrified to pick the phone up and talk to people out there. And it's just you never really think about what can happen, but it's great to be in an organisation that has got at its core developing its people. There's no limit on someone starting here. We've had people come in before as interns or students and reach the executive team. Dr. Steve Mann, who's now the head of health and wellbeing at Places for People Leisure, started out as a student and he left us as a director and is now playing a critical role in the industry for one of the biggest players in the market. So core to our identity is helping people to develop.
Right. So when I was talking again earlier, we've been going for 20 years, and when we started it was the FIA.
Yeah, right.
And we spoke to Geraldine a little while ago, who I've known also for the same amount of time, and I've always known the FIA and a lot of the people in it, but never fully understood what they do.
Yeah, maybe that's how we like it,
Kind of secret society, secret handshakes.
There's another layer,
And you kind of, as a supplier, you sort of feel as though you should support it, but don't understand it. So tell us what you do. Well, let's start it this way. Tell us how it started, what the original purpose of it is, and what it does today.
Yeah, so the organisation was set up back in 1991, and really it was set up by some of the founders of the chains that went on to build the industry. So the Mike Balfour early days at Fitness First and Harm Tegelars, what became Cannons, and you had Esporta and LA Fitness and Dave Courtine, and these guys were entrepreneurs with a vision for growing an industry, but they knew they needed a place where they could talk about standards, quality, and organise great piss-up trips to the US for Ursa. I think that was basically what sustained about the first 15 years of the organisation, with a little added boost of Commit to Get Fit, which helped to provide a sort of rallying marketing push every summer as something that all the operators could get behind. And UK Active evolved. It had a great mission, right from the early days. More people, more active, more often. Really set out what it was here for as a purpose.
And when did that kind of come in?
Look, as far as I'm aware, it's always been there. Right. Nigel Wallace, often reminds me. I think he was one of the brains behind that initial slogan. But that helped us to make sure that, from early doors, we were able to build a broad representation across the industry, bring the public, private, third sector together behind a common goal. But it was probably around sort of 2008 and 9, Fred Turek coming in as chair, founder of LA Fitness, entrepreneurial vision, Dave joining the company, Dave Stalker, and that's when really the vision and the ambition really sort of got turned up, and there was a view of trying to get really quite serious as an organisation. So the goal then quickly became more than just sort of a narrow trade association, but the vision was how could we evolve over a period of time to become a true campaigning movement that still represented its members and brought its members together, but cast its net wider, built bigger partnerships, had a bigger impact on the nation, had a bigger impact on government policy, and we set about trying to make that happen.
Right. And how do you actually do that then? How does that happen today?
Yeah, well, how it happens today is that we've had to shift from being on the back foot as a sector. I can remember in those early days as an intern starting to prepare for January from October because actually we knew January was actually going to be quite a negative month for the industry and the media, a lot of negative comment, the sector wasn't in a great position, and we set about repositioning that. Going from a negative view of fitness and the fitness industry to being where we are today as an integral part of the solution to improving the health and well-being of the nation. So that was about engaging positively with policymakers and the media and helping to explain the contribution that we make to the nation's health, and a far broader range of policy priorities. The fact that leading active lifestyles for kids helps them to perform better at schools, making that case clear, helping to explain that active communities were nicer places to live and actually brought people together. Trying to work a way through different government policies to elevate our value and our importance, because that was the fundamental driver behind all of this. If we could raise the value of physical activity to society, if we could make it more important, then that created much more fertile conditions for growth for everyone, whether you're a supplier or an operator or a new market entrant. If this is a vibrant, energetic sector full of opportunity, then that's then up to our members to have the great products, great services. They've got every chance to grow.
Yeah. So do you mainly do that through the private health club operators? Is that your main sort of connection?
4,000 members now. They come from the broadest range of organisations you could imagine. All the major private sector groups are part of that, and they've backed this movement for a long time. But so too, huge backing from the public sector, charitable organisations. We now increasingly work with major global commercial brands, major organisations that use physical activity as part of their strategy for engaging their communities, their customers, their colleagues, right the way through to voluntary groups. We've got voluntary walking groups who are members of ours who take people out for walks on the weekend to help them reduce their chances of relapse after cancer treatment. I mean, the breadth of organisations that share that mission to get more people more active more often has never been broader.
Right.
And we're there to bring them together, to connect them, and to help the market to grow overall.
Right. It sounds like it's a huge undertaking, and there's probably so many different places that you can go. How do you decide where to start and where you can have the most impact?
Well, it's been a long journey, So one of the key parts of that was that we had to strengthen the identity and integrity of everything that we were doing. So one of the key things that myself and Dave Stalker committed to was setting up the ukactive Research Institute, which helped us to move from anecdote to evidence about the impact of the sector and create a competency and a capacity to do things that we never had before. A great example of that, exercise referral schemes, right? Exercise on prescription. We would have heard about that for decades. But any time that was brought out in the media, it was instantly slammed as lacking evidence, lacking effectiveness. National Institute for Clinical Excellence, the body that decides what's a good medical treatment or otherwise, used to come out and say, well, there's no evidence for that. And we knew that was rubbish because you spend any time in a leisure centre seeing the people that are going through these programs, they're changing their lives, but that wasn't coming through in the science. So we've now managed to work through our research institute rather than focusing on each individual scheme evaluating themselves. We aggregate all of the data from the majority of the schemes in the country, and we can now see over the course of the year 30,000 patients going through these schemes, and we can start to look at, which types of people do which types of programs work in which settings for which conditions, and we can go back into government and we can actually say, well, look, we need to change the way we think about this. Here's the evidence for it. Strengthening the sort of identity and integrity of the industry has really been important and a big driver of our decisions that we take.
Right. And how do you get that through to, I guess, the man and woman in the street? Because I guess when you open the news in the morning, you look on the internet and you have one specialist saying, well, you need to do this 5 times a week, and then you've got somebody else saying the other thing, and then I guess in the middle you've probably got the doctors or the politicians that are kind of like, well, what is right? How do you deal with that?
I think the really positive thing for us is where we had to prepare for January is the big spike in the year where we had to be on the back foot and defend the industry. I do believe every single day we open up the papers now and there is positivity about the value and importance of exercise for your health and well-being. For every population group from cradle through to grave, there is something every day that's getting that message across, and we need to continue working with trusted advisors. Our scientific advisory committee and our head of research here works with the Department of Health and the Chief Medical Officer's guidelines on physical activity. So continuously getting the evidence base out there. I mean, we're still lacking that 5 a day equivalent that everyone sort of instantly grasps and knows is the recommendation for how many fruit and vegetables you should consume. We're probably still, despite all of the focus on guidelines for the public, probably haven't landed that message with enough clarity.
Right.
But there's a great opportunity to do that, because although we're a relatively small organisation here, we sit atop a movement of 4,000 organisations, and our power is in when we align our messaging, we communicate effectively, we can actually have quite a significant reach. So that's how we try to work it, working through our members and partners, bringing messaging together, and we can reach huge audiences when we do that type of thing.
Yeah. What have been some of the big challenges that you've had to achieve that goal?
Big challenges. Well, short term here in the UK, there's no doubt that what's going on currently around Brexit is an all-encompassing, whatever your political opinion, nightmare for focusing on any other sort of government policy. And at some point, the government is going to come through this process and wake up and start thinking about, well, what do we value most as a nation, and what's really important. And health is a real problem. The inactivity is the leading contributor to 20 different lifestyle-related conditions or diseases, and lifestyle choices are fundamentally making our NHS unaffordable here in the UK. It's quite a hard thing for a politician to admit, but it's pretty much bankrupt, right? And we've just put another £20 billion in over the next 5 years to try and address that, but it's just going to go into a black hole unless we can shift that entire system to a more preventative footing. And when that shift happens, because it is going to happen, it has to happen, we've got to have an industry that's ready to engage in that agenda, to serve it, to work in an evidence-based way, to show the outcomes we can deliver, and actually help people have some fun whilst they're doing it, right? That's the goal. So challenge at the moment is just getting some clarity of thinking out of government when it's got a rather big problem on its hands.
Yeah. And the two-part question is how do you get that message into government? And with everything that's going on in most big countries around the world, how do you make things happen? Because even in a big, even a small to medium-sized organisation, everybody has their own agendas, and it's very difficult to sort of get alignment.
You've got to pick your issues, and right now the NHS turns 70. There is a legitimate question about what the NHS will look like in 70 years' time. It's its 70th birthday. Will it still be here in 70 years' time? The only way it's going to get there is if prevention is focused upon. So you've got to pick your issues. Another big issue here. UK, like every nation in the Western world, has an ageing society. We're living longer, but we're adding years to life. We're not actually adding much enjoyment to life, because we're just as we age, we're being kept alive by fantastic medical treatments, not necessarily thinking about how do you add enjoyment to those years. And the type of data we now aggregate here in the UK. We're analysing 450 facilities, over 150 million customer visits a year, demographic data, who they are, where they're from, when they're using, what they're doing, what classes, where, what, how. The amount of data we now have access to as an organisation is just unbelievable. But one of the great things of that is we can start to identify where we've got gaps, and in that data we're seeing 20% of customer visits from public centre leisure centres coming from people aged over 55, which I think tremendous, that's brilliant, but actually it's 33% of the population, over 50% of the nation's wealth. Yet we know that activity is the primary way to keep people, as they age, fit, happy, independent, not increasing the risks of falls, fractures, and the costs on social care that government's worrying about. So we can see a clear issue there for the industry, where we've got a market that needs to be supported. It's in government's massive interest to help. So we have an opportunity to have a win-win relationship there, where we can help the industry to thrive and help solve a massive problem for government, which is how do they address the challenge of an ageing society. There's other areas. Take workplace health. Data that comes out there. Apparently 13% of people in work are medically classified as being pre-frail. 3% are already frail. But in that 13% category, you're 20 times more likely to not be in work. So a great opportunity to work with government to say the productivity of the nation is being impacted by basic fitness, and we can address that. So what are the policy changes, tax incentives, the reforms to how employers are encouraged to look after their staff that can be put in place? And it's all about creating a proactivity climate with government, where they are proactive and supportive of our industry.
What's it like dealing with government? Is it, as you'd imagine, very slow and painful and don't move very quickly? Or I
hate it. I was the industry's resident policy geek, right? That was I had to apologise. That's how I'd introduce myself. And over the years, pace of change is frustrating, and you want things to happen quicker. But I now have an incredible team that deal with that stuff, that understand the dynamics, how it works. Hugh Edwards, who heads up our public affairs and comms team, incredibly experienced individual, helped deal with government liaison for building the 2012 Olympic Games. An incredible asset for our industry to have this character working for us on this agenda. And obviously with our chair, Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson, sat there in the House of Lords, representing our industry, incredible relationship builder, brings huge trust to everything we're trying to do. So they do a fantastic job on that, and that sort of frees me up a little bit to think about, what about our members? What is it that they need? Where is the industry going? How can we serve them? How can we keep evolving as an organisation? So, we've gone from being a pretty narrow trade association into a campaigning movement, but if we forget our members, we don't exist, right?
Is it like a kind of a bit of a club where it's all about who you know and getting the right people in the right places to make things happen?
I think from a policy perspective, yes, it's relationships, networks, influence, evidence. Being able to go in with, I spoke about the data that we're now aggregating. We can now tell you to the penny and pound the amount of social value that the industry generates for government every year. Nearly over £3.3 billion worth of value that our industry is creating, and that's just the public sector. That's where we've got the data at the moment. You think about the private sector contribution in that as well, enormous. So it's about the evidence, it's about the relationships, it's about trust, it's about them believing that our sector is genuinely credible, that we're here for the long term, and that we're committed to making an impact.
Yeah. Is there how important is that government component? Obviously, I know you've got to be sensitive to what you say, but is that one part of how you can be effective? You talked about the sort of private sector as well. Are there things that could be done independently of the
massively, massively. I'll give you an example of that. So, our research institute has been analysing what's happening to children and young people in the UK at the moment, and working with one of our members, a private sector member, Premier Sport, who work in schools, providing kids activities, kids camps, an enormous, working with nearly 2,500 schools across the country, a big player. And we were asked to evaluate the effectiveness of their programme and what impact they're having on kids, and we tracked cardiorespiratory fitness data and performance data, and we showed over the school year kids' levels of fitness were actually steadily improving, which is terrific, right? Levels of BMI stabilising and dropping. So Premier, being a forward-thinking entrepreneurial company, said, brilliant, we want to turn this into a longitudinal study, we want to show the impact we make over multiple years, brought us back in for a long-term study. We did the measurements again in September, and what did we see? 80% of the progress that had been made were lost over the summer holidays. So the days of childhood of literally mum would kick me out the door of a football and I'd be away for 6 weeks. There's a different dynamic in childhood now. So we try to engage government around that, and there has today been an announcement that they're investing behind that, but that's 18 months after we started to engage. In the meantime, we've worked with Sainsbury's, who for the past 10 years have invested 168 million quid in their active kids scheme, putting equipment into schools through the voucher exchange. And we've suggested to them, well, maybe it's time to move from thinking about just providing equipment to actually focusing on experience and actually helping kids during this period, helping families. And they absolutely bought into it. So it was the private sector that came along that saw the insight, saw the gaps, saw the needs, saw government sat on its hands, put their money where their mouth is, invested, and we're now live across the country with this programme. Parents have got a place which is affordable where their kids can go and get active for the summer, keep moving, get fed, which is a problem in some parts of the country, and that's the private sector that's doing that. So I really believe that business has got a huge role to play in this agenda, and can do things that the public sector can't.
Yeah. How important is it to the relationship with the media, traditional, and I guess how can you use some of the new media platforms now to get some of those messages across?
Yeah, well, obviously the traditional media is important, and there's a team here that focuses on that. But the opportunities that social media is presenting the networks to relationships, is transformational, and I do think that is playing a significant role in the backdrop to raising the value of our sector, its visibility, its awareness, particularly with the younger generation. We've seen the impact of that on our work. So, National Fitness Day, for example, a complete accidental success story.
And tell us
we took that over. Energy Fitness, one of the private sector operators here in the UK, created it, realised they got it to a stage they couldn't take it any further, handed over to us and said, can you make something of this? Can you turn it into a pan-sector moment? So, ambition of National Fitness Day is to be the most active day of the year, where the entire sector opens up its doors, reaches out, brings people in, and throws a big, massive activity-themed party. And we had about marketing budget of about £12.50 for this. It's the reality. But what we were able to do was align the messaging with all of the marketing teams of all of our members, and through social. I remember the first time we did it, it just took off. And all of a sudden we were trending globally with this thing, and we had influencer after influencer engaging in it, and that shows you the power of the reach of aligned messaging, clarity of purpose, a good cause that you're trying to do, and the industry working behind this. This is one of those moments where we move from being a narrow trade association to a movement, when on 26th of September this year, we can throw open the doors and we can drive a campaign, and it's social that makes that type of thing happen. Even 7 years ago, we'd have been trying to raise budget for out-of-home advertising or leaflet drops, or it's just a different world.
Yeah, and that's the 26th of September this year as well as
26th of September this year. So last year, we had over 20,000 events across the country, reached well over 5 million people. A fantastic day just to celebrate all that's great about our industry. I can talk for hours about the challenges of health inequalities and turning the tide of inactivity and public health crisis and all these types of things. National Fitness Day, as they would say, sod it, let's just have a load of fun through fitness. Fitness is a fun thing. Jumping on boxes, running around, and we're a fantastic sector, and we've got to just open the doors to people who think it's not for them. And absolutely it is. It's something that we have that can benefit everyone.
And for people who don't know about it and are interested, so how do they find out about National Fitness Day, and what could they do to be part of it?
So nationalfitnessday.com. You can go on the website there. We've got loads of supporting materials, supporting packs. It's all up to each operator to throw a National Fitness Day party as they wish. Really, we're not prescriptive about it, and then it's their imagination. And we've seen, some of our members stage pretty major events, where they've been able to go and bring lots of different partners together to make it happen. We've got AXA PPP, big health insurer, one of the headline partners of this. So they're promoting it heavily out to corporate Britain. So they've got 2.3 million people who are on PMI insurance with them. So they have access to lots of corporates. So they're encouraging employers to allow their staff to take a flying start to the day. So come in a little bit later, get some exercise in the morning. So lots of corporates will be interested in this, so great opportunity for our members to go out and build some bridges and some relationships with local employers. It's there, and it's open for creativity and for people to make it their own.
Yeah, we'll have to. I like that idea about. I guess all companies can play a part in it as well. I suppose even if you're not a fitness chain, like coming in later or finishing earlier to go and have a workout is an interesting one.
A great day to just engage the teams in this and remind the whole sector of what we do this for. We've got lots of people in our industry who are in customer service roles, in and out of facilities. You're engaging day in, day out with the interface, but we're all running organisations where we've got finance teams or back of house support teams, and it's just nice just to remind everyone that this is the purpose, this is what it's about. So we've seen a lot of suppliers actually get behind it and really embrace the day as well.
And I guess that's an interesting thing. Like we spoke about kids earlier, and I guess in a lot of cases, even in our company, there's still probably a lot of people who don't fully understand what they should be doing from both an exercise perspective and, I guess more importantly, from a nutrition perspective, and then I guess that trickles down to the kids, and you mentioned when they, when on holiday, it all gets reversed. What do you think we can do to, I guess, better educate parents on those ideas to sort of make sure that their kids don't? Because I guess it's easy just to stick the kids in front of a computer and the TV, and they're happy with the way things are nowadays, and the cost to put them in these types of clubs. But how do you think what you can get a message to the parents to impact the children, and for those two sides to work together?
I think that's it's got to come from all sides. Public messaging on this, it helps that the government is proactively trying to get information out there on it. But I do think a lot of these big societal challenges, actually, it's the younger generation can be part of the answer, influencing the other way. So right. We've seen that around sustainability and recycling. One of the biggest things that drove that on were kids coming home from school and just being outraged at their parents for what they were doing, and that's how society can change, when actually the pest to power by reverse.
Yeah, that's
I can really see that.
Funny thing is, so in the children's holiday, we've in the US there's a campaign about plastic straws. I don't know whether it's over here. But then they've come up with a little tagline at their school about plastic straws. And so whenever we go out now, they're like, just, you can't drink from that straw, you've got to leave it out. And I guess what they'd done within their school, they'd highlighted how it affects, the environment and the animals, etc. And our children are just, they even complain to the people in the restaurants. So I suppose that's working through the schools to get those types of messages.
And that's where we are as a sector now. This is a societal movement. This is about trying to find that moment where, the idea of not taking a slightly extended lunch break to go and fit in a workout would be absurd, as opposed to the fact that you do. Or, we talk of the moment when the health secretary realises that they're making exercise 20% more expensive than it has to because it's being taxed. And those type of moments where you're like, what's going on here? This is the moment I think we're at with activity, where if we were sat here today 20 years ago, maybe not talking about this topic, but you wouldn't have thought different about having a fag in your mouth, smoking away, and society changes. And I feel that that's what we've been starting to witness in our sector over the last sort of 7 or so years, where, and it's not one reason for it. It's not what the industry's doing. It's not what government's doing. It's not just what big brands moving into the market, the likes of Apple and the rest of them. It's just from every angle we're building a more fertile climate for activity and improvement of health. And in that type of environment, attitudes can shift rapidly.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite exciting to see how that unfolds for us.
Yeah. And do you think that children are a key part in this? Because I guess they're the future. You talk about the NHS and how that's already crumbling. I suppose for our children it will be even worse at that point. So do you think it's important to kind of look at schools and kids?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's it's a sustainability issue for the industry as well, isn't it? Those relationships. This is the customers of the future, and thinking ahead and making sure if you can do something as an operator anywhere in the world to pay that forward, that's a great thing to be doing from a CSR perspective, but also the long-term sustainability of your organisation. So I absolutely see that as really important area.
Have you seen any examples of operators working with schools and doing anything?
Yeah, you do, and if you spend any time in the public sector leisure facilities, these places are often overrun with kids. You see the kids programming that's going into David Lloyd now with some of their work. It's not about they're putting in real sort of fitness-based training programs, which is fantastic. Really good quality stuff. There's also new business models emerging. I recently went to see GoFit, which is an operator in Spain and Portugal. They have combined family-based membership products and over 400 classes a week, and actually parents and families able to come and exercise in the same place at the same time. New business models emerging to solve a gap in the family market, which is what can we do that's positive and healthy for our family. So we expect to see more of that. Yeah.
Right. So what's the organisation's sort of key top few for the few priorities for the next few years that you want to tick off?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot that we need to do to continue to add value to our members and partners, because without them, we're nothing. We're lucky we've got about 200 organisations that have been with us for 25 years, and we're very committed to making more fall into that category. So we spend a lot of time talking to the industry, our members, the CEOs, the big chains, trying to understand where can we add value. So that's driven a lot of our work over the last couple of years. For example, a lot of our learning and development work. So introducing a Future Leaders program, which came from the insight, the feedback from CEOs that there was a whole next generation of young people looking to emerge in leadership positions in our industry that weren't getting the visibility, the support, the acceleration that they needed, and weren't getting the access to the types of high quality business school education that is routine in other sectors, that when you reach a certain level, you get that level of progression. So we stepped in there in partnership with IESE, and we created a fantastic program for future leaders, but that will now deepen. We've got a degree apprenticeship program coming through where you can get a management level degree tailored for specifically working in our industry. So learning and development and helping create a culture of that, I think, in our sector will be a big priority. Secondly, around speaking earlier today about the fantastic pace of change and innovation that we're seeing in the market. I mean, startup business plans flying around all over the place, lots of investor interest, lots of people willing to add their support and guidance to new market entrants, and an established industry that doesn't want to be on the wrong side of disruption, wants to know what innovation is out there. So that really drove our establishment of Active Lab, which is our accelerator program for startups.
So just tell us about what's Active Lab for those.
Yeah, so Active Lab is there to be the global launchpad of innovation in physical activity. So we're scouting as widely as we can for new businesses, new startups, fitness technology that can really add value and help our sector to grow. And we provide a 12-week program for those startups of education, networking, support to build their profile, help them validate their concepts, and then accelerate their growth to market. And there is a loss of energy out there at the moment in the startup community, and we want to be there to help facilitate and support that.
Yeah, and that's not just a UK initiative, is it? You could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Look, it's one of those things, right? Escape your limits, set your goals big and high, right? You come up with these sort of slogans or straplines, and on Active Lab it was the global launchpad of innovation in physical activity, and we sort of put that out there as the big hairy goal or whatever, and then all of a sudden we started getting applications in. We've had applications come in from the US, from Israel. There was a company on the program last year from Australia. We've had applications from Singapore. Old UK active here. We created something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And you look at the big. You can't move around San Fran without seeing an incubator or an accelerator somewhere, and it just staggered us. There wasn't one of those in the health and fitness market. We're a big industry now with big ambitions, big opportunity to grow. So, it's our little contribution to starting that. I do believe in the future there will be more incubators and accelerators for the health and fitness sector, and perhaps more resource and even more energy behind it. But Active Lab was the start of that for us.
And if someone has an idea, and it's technology based, isn't it?
It is predominantly, yeah, technology based, yeah.
And if someone has an idea, how would they find out about getting involved in that?
Yeah, so UK Active website, the section there for Active Lab, there's an application process where you can get on our radar and we can start that conversation. Standalone website, activelab.co. We're constantly scouting. We'll be opening for entries for this year's program in October, but it's another area where we rely on our members and partners to help us be aware of what's promising out there. We were talking to you just before, Matt, when you get pitched from all sorts of directions with these things, and some of them just aren't quite ready for you or aren't quite right. But we want our members and partners to be sending them our way so we can help. It's a great service for the industry to help these companies to become more market ready.
Yeah, and you're generally looking for companies that have, you tell me, sort of a little bit set in their ideas, is that right?
Yeah, I think Active Lab in its current iteration is very much focused on something that's beyond the kind of cunning plan stage, right? So it's been tested, it's been used, perhaps there's some revenue, there's a good team, it's got good prospects for growth, because that's where we can really add the most value. But we have an innovation network which is now over 180 companies, where there are many more early stage companies, and we like that too. The program is predominantly focused on those scale up companies, but the innovation network is there to help perhaps an earlier stage, because the earlier we know about these things, the better, and there might be other ways that we can support as well.
Yeah, okay. So just before we finish, I've got a few questions that are just for you, Steve, but I want to make sure that everybody knows about all the stuff that you've got going on and the opportunities. So just a bit of a pitch for UK Active. What are the key events or activities that you want to tell people about?
Well, certainly National Fitness Day. We've spoken about that. 26th of September. It's something actually that's spread. So Europe Active, which is a body that I helped set up all those years ago, about 10 years ago, now has National Fitness Days happening across Europe as well. So I know this is a global audience on this podcast. So here in the UK, it's 26th of September. There will be National Fitness Days across the world. So keep an eye out for those. We would obviously love to see many more of our members and partners engaging with us around our flagship event of the year, conference and awards, the Active Uprising. You probably remember Flame fondly.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Lots of alcohol, I remember.
Absolutely.
So the same concept, or is it?
No, mainly. There's a bit of that. If we lost it, we talk about Active Uprising, we'd have a rebellion on our hands if we moved away from that. But so we freshened that up this year, reinvigorated it. So we host that now in Manchester. Be the 4th to 6th of June next year, so that'll be a fantastic thing for people to keep an eye out for. I think UK Active, one of the key messages is that we are a bit of an enigma to some. It's quite hard to package, market, promote this thing, right? We're working on many fronts. I do wonder if many people understand the depth of quality in our research team, the value that they can add, the data analysts we've got, the amount of data we're aggregating. And
can people tap into that? Can they pick up and say, look,
absolutely. Absolutely. So the types of projects we're now doing, we've helped Les Mills to analyse the impact of Les Mills programs on retention and average attendance rates and how that differs from other types of class formats. We've worked with ZingFit to analyse trends in the global boutique market, what's going on in London versus New York versus Mexico versus LA, and analysing. So many of our members and partners are sat on enormous amounts of data. And I think that's really important for suppliers, and that there's a journey. No one wants to be in this sort of commodities conversation based on price, right? It's all about value. And look at this thing, what you're doing, the education you provide to the sector through this podcast series. It's all about ideas and inspiration and education. And they're sat on so much knowledge, so much data. So our research team's there to help bring that to life, to understand what it can tell us and help the whole market forward. So I think it's really important that people reach out to us and have conversations, and the more we understand about where the sector's going and what our members need, the better we can tailor how we can assist them.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of questions for you personally then, Steve. So what's been the biggest achievement of your own career at UK Active, would you say?
Biggest achievement? I think we've left a really significant mark on the way that the government thinks about and invests in physical activity. So, if we wind back 3 or 4 years, we were spending over a 4-year period about £1 billion, predominantly trying to get more people out onto rugby pitches or playing football. And it was one session of sport per week, and we had 42 national governing bodies of sport that were running around spending all this money, and we were misdirecting our focus, and we launched when we were UK Active. We said we were agnostic about how people move as long as they do, right? Let's just get the nation moving, and let's recognise that there are 12.8 million people in this country who are totally inactive, and it's those 12.8 million people that lead to the 20 lifestyle-related conditions or diseases that are fundamentally going to bankrupt the NHS. So let's refocus on how do we support inactive people to just start moving, get moving a bit more. And that really shifted the way that government works, and the new DCMS strategy that came out, Sporting Futures, wholesale adopted that thinking, lock, stock and barrel. And then that led to, Sport England's strategy towards an active nation, shifting the way that they invest, nearly £300 million a year into the industry. And, you can talk about correlation, our policy work, that outcome, and causation. Did we lead to it? Who knows? But whatever happens, we left a real mark on that, and that's made a difference. And there'll be a constant investment stream for the next 5 years, which is there to, help a broader diversity of organisations to essentially grow the number of people who are interested in improving their health for activity. So really proud of that, and there's a lot more benefits to come through it, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you're certainly a guy with vision and I'm sure goals. What's the next personal or professional goal at the top of your list at the moment?
I don't know, I ask myself a lot of those questions a lot, right? And I've always been really lucky in the roles that I've been put into at UK Active, where if I was ever bored with what we were doing, it was my own fault. We hadn't come up with that next new concept, and we've just come through an era, last few years, where Active Lab and Future Leaders and the Degree Apprenticeship Programme and Active Uprising, National Fitness Day, and the work that the Research Institute's done. We've just been pumping this stuff out. I do think there is a next era for UK Active where we help to connect some of this stuff a little bit better and really deepen engagement with our members and partners, and really help communicate in a clearer way the ways that we can add value. So I think for UK, so that's a really, really important next step, really, where we've maybe not quite put the brake on, but let's just try and make sure we're delivering the type of value that we should be doing as an organisation. Yeah. So I think that's probably quite key.
And what about personal, like being able to go up the stairs without or get your whole team going up and down the stairs without using the lifts?
Personally, look, I got given this job as CEO here, taken over from Dave Stalker. He calls it seamless succession planning. I call it reckless hospital pass. In that at the time we had no board. We'd just gone through a big governance review. We had 26 of the good and the great, all the major chains, all the CEOs, all representatives on the board. We've gone through a governance review, got rid of all of those just before he decided to move on. And we've built this fantastic board. Tanny leads it, incredible non-exec directors. So my objective has just been to really feel comfortable in that type of climate, the old imposter syndrome where you're about to get a tap on the shoulder and say, oh no, we were only joking, you didn't really have a chance to run this thing. So for me, my personal goal is always about personal growth. How can I keep learning? So I just obsess over your podcast or wherever else I can get information. I always want to make sure I can look back on a year with some very tangible achievements in it. So personal objective is all about that learning and development for me. Yeah.
And talking about learning and development then, are there any good books or podcasts that you're listening to that would be worth people checking out?
Yeah.
Apart from the Escape Your Limits.
Escape Your Limits. Do you know what's quite nice about chatting to you in person is I listen to podcasts on 1.5 speed. So it's quite nice just to... to actually just to know what's going on. But it's... So... there's loads. Obviously the HBR stuff. I really like... it's maybe a bit cheesy in American, but there's a great podcast I like listening to called the Awesome Office, which is about workplace culture and how you can create great behaviours in your team. And I mean that is just something that's never done with this millennial generation as well. You've got to be constantly thinking about how you make your place a better place to work, and there's a lot more we have to do on that. Got me on the spot. Now it's probably a ton. I'll tell you what, for the show notes, I'll drop you my 5 favourite reads for the past 12 months or something, and I'll share that with you. Because there's lots of lessons to learn always.
Yeah. And the final one then, so Escape Your Limits is about escaping what either you've believed yourself is an impossible ceiling that you can't break through, or probably other people around you may have said, well, you're not going to be able to do that, and you've gone on to do it. What would be your best example of escaping your own personal limits?
I'll probably give you, I don't know, maybe like a professional one and a personal one. So probably a professional one in terms of something we didn't quite get right, but it has got like potential in the future to be addressed, right? It's probably our limits at the moment. And that's, back in 2011, we saw the gap in the sector for digital competency and what was going on in other markets around improving customer service, enhancing insight abilities, and we set about addressing that with a program called SPOGO in partnership with government, which was to make it as easy to find and book an exercise class as it is a hotel room or a train ticket. And I remember at the time walking around the industry talking about APIs and people offering me eye drops and asking what was wrong, and we were a little bit early and executed badly and found our limits as an organisation. But it remains a real problem. There is a live conversation going on in the industry at the moment about the role of aggregators, the role of third parties, and had we addressed that in a different way, we might have been in a position where the industry owned its own vehicle and controlled its own destiny on that agenda. So we hit our limits there, and I do think there is a live conversation to be had around the agenda of digital transformation and supporting innovation. What's the role of ukactive in that? We pushed up to our limits and stopped, but somehow we need to think about it again. Personally, I heard Kevin Yates's podcast, and I heard of his 24-mile blow-up on the marathon, and it made me really proud to say that my blow-up came after 26.1 miles. So this year, London Marathon, hottest one on record, charging up the mall. Don't remember finishing, woke up in the emergency intensive care tent with ice packs in places you never thought ice packs could fit, being cooled down from a temperature of 41.5 degrees. Met my physical limit, but I think I might have to go back again next year for St John's Ambulance and raise a bit of cash for them because they helped me out there. But so that's my personal breaking point was 41.5 degree body temperature. Right?
Wow, and on that one then, you're certainly a man of action.
Thanks, mate.
And appreciate your time. Best of luck with everything. We'll certainly get involved in that National Fitness Day. I think that's on the agenda for September now. So thanks again.
Cool, great, cheers. Thanks very much. Cheers.